For this assignment, we are going to be looking at the artist Gustav Klimt. Gustav Klimt lived from 1862 to 1918. He lived in Austria and he was a painter. Here is a picture of him with his cat up here, and here's a piece that really exemplifies or is a good example of his artwork. He's considered to be part of two different movements. He's part of symbolism and Art Nouveau. Now, symbolism has a lot of really dreamy imagery. It's kind of light. It's not boom, right in your face like some of the artists that we've talked about. And Art Nouveau is inspired by natural forms. So like you can see here, we've got spirals and we've got dots and it's light. It's got some red in it, which is nice and bold, but it's not like really dark and heavy. For this project, we are actually going to be looking specifically at his project, or at his painting called Baby. So you can see like there's this baby here and it's just all sorts of piled up in a bunch of quilts. And what we're going to do instead is we are going to draw ourselves with just like the biggest, comfiest quilt ever. For this project, you should have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by drawing our person. Now, we're only drawing the head and maybe the shoulders, but you need to do it at about a third of the way up the page. Don't go teeny, tiny, because that won't work. That's just going to be way too small. I like to think at least 2, maybe even 3 fingers tall. So I'm going to do either a circle or an oval. We've drawn people before. I'm going to do an oval. Now, because it's so small though, I'm not going to make you go super duper detailed, but first things first, the eyes go right across the middle, and my person's going to be sleeping. Maybe give them some eyelashes there. Remember, you're going to have to trace everything, so be careful. And then for the nose, I'm going to do a upside down question mark nose. You could also do like an upside down 7, or maybe one of the more realistic noses that we talked about. But for our first project for the year, I'm not going to make you go super duper hardcore. Now, if you want to draw lips, you can. I'm just going to go, I think I'm going to start with a smile, and then to add lips, you kind of just make them bigger like that. Don't forget eyebrows. Lots of times we forget our eyebrows. Now, your ears, you could do the heart, you could do the half circle, you could do the half peanut like we've talked about before. So like that's kind of a half circle mixed with a heart. So now my ears don't match, so I'm going to have to erase. Remember, we got to draw light until we get it right, okay? For our hair, first we got to add the bangs. So that's like from the tippy top of your head down to your eyebrows. Okay, so some of us might have our bangs pushed back, or maybe you have bangs that you got your bed head going on, so it's all up in the way there. Remember, because we're going to be sleeping in this, so you could have nice, perfectly straight hair. I think I'm going to give my person, they're going to kind of have some messy hair. I know I wake up with some pretty messy bed head. All right, now underneath my person, I need to draw the line for my first quilt. So I'm going to draw a line kind of right here. And I'm just going to have their neck go down to that, so I can't see the shoulders or anything. Behind my person, I need to put a pillow. If you want to do like a couple pillows because you want your person to be super duper duper comfy, that's fine. I'm just going to do the one pillow. And now I'm ready to start decorating my quilts. So because our piece of paper is only 8.5 by 11, we're not going to break our quilt up into teeny tiny spaces. I'd say about 6 is your minimum, and I would not go more than 8 because 8 is going to give you some small spaces, and we got to put patterns in each of these spaces on our quilt, okay? But we don't just want to go boom, 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 straight lines. If you remember Mr. Klimt's baby painting, it should be up in the corner in this video, that is got like lots of curves and lumps and bumps. We want ours to look similar. So I'm going to start by making kind of like one curved line. Okay, so that gives me 2 spaces. I still need at least 4 more. So I'm going to just keep breaking it up. So that gives me 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll notice my goal was to not have any super huge spaces. They're all similar. This one's kind of my smallest, but that's a-okay. And then behind my person, I'm going to put, so you can have another quilt that kind of goes from side to side. I kind of like how in Mr. Klimt's it kind of is like a pile of quilts behind them. And I'm just going to do that. If I want, I could do a section there. but I think that I'm good with that. So now each of my sections of quilt needs a different pattern, and we've talked about patterns a lot before. So we're in 4th grade now. We don't need to do just checkerboard, but let's say I wanted to do something that starts like checkerboard. So I'm drawing my checkerboard here, all the way across, and then maybe inside my checkerboard I'll put polka dots. All right. We could also do, because remember, Mr. Klimt is Art Nouveau style, so he's inspired by nature. So maybe one of my patterns is going to be kind of like those spirals that he has. Maybe I'll drop some leaves in there too, so it kind of looks like vines. But our goal is to fill each section with different patterns. Now, if you can't think of a single pattern, try looking around your room, because your shirt might have a pattern, a blanket might have a pattern, different boards do, or if push comes to shove, Google it. Google patterns, easy to draw patterns, fun patterns, nature patterns, all sorts of patterns. You just need enough patterns so that each section gets its own separate pattern. All right, so now you can see I've got a pattern in each of my sections. I kind of repeated the circles a little bit, but I made sure that each pattern was different. So for example, I have polka dots, but I also added Z's, because it's like they say when you're sleeping, you're catching Z's. And I wanted to make sure I had something to color that wasn't just the background. So, because if I'm going to trace my Z, I won't be able to color my Z. If I did block letter Z's, that's different. But now I have to go through and trace everything. So you could use a black pen, you could use a Sharpie, a fine point marker, a black colored pencil, that's up to you. I'm just going to use one of the fine point markers that we have in the classroom, and I'm just going to trace everything as carefully as possible. Remember, you can always erase your pencil later, but we want to make sure that we don't have to erase too much. And if you're using pen or marker, be careful, because we don't want it to accidentally smear. So you're just going to go through and trace everything. All right, so you can see I've already finished tracing and I've started to color a little bit. I had to get rid of the lips because with my marker, it was just too small. Maybe if I was using a black pen, it would have worked. But we are going to be using colored pencil for this. Now, the reason we use colored pencil is because it works really well when it comes to mixing. You can make a lot of colors with just a few colored pencils. So for example, here on my sky, I can make a nice light blue by barely pushing. And then I can make a nice dark blue by pushing hard. Okay, up on my leaves here, I can drop in a nice light green. And then maybe I want to mix so that I've kind of got like a more like a real leaf color, and I can mix in a dark green there. So while you're coloring, because we got to get this whole part colored in, you might run into the problem where you're like, oh, I don't know what color to use. But what you could always do is go back and look at Mr. Klimt's painting. So like you can see that he's got some pops of orange, some nice dark blues. He doesn't just do everything with the same color. So I kind of like this kind of like, he's got like a yellowish kind of mixed weird color background, and I couldn't think of what color to put here, but I kind of like that yellow color, so I think I'm going to drop that in here. Remember, when in doubt, you can always just look back to our master that we're talking about for this project. Once you have it all done and colored, you need to do the background. Now for the background, we're just going to pick one colored pencil. Try to pick a color that you don't have all over the place. So I have a lot of like red and stuff. I'm not going to pick that. Instead, I think I'm going to pick, like this light blue color. All right. So first, you're going to color the background lightly. You're going to color the whole space lightly. Once you have the background all colored in, now you need to pick a pattern. Now you can do it first with pencil lightly if you want, but I'm going to pick a pattern that I think I can just jump right in, and I'm going to push hard with the same exact color. So I think I'm going to do a stripe and then a polka dot stripe. And then a stripe. And I'm gonna do this all the way along. It's gonna kind of make it so that our background looks like it's got a wallpaper. And then once you're done, you are completed with this project and you can turn it in.